Right, hi Victor and hi Ikea for speaking to me after your recording. Do you want to share something about how you prepare and chose this particular song for with the?
I chanced upon this music video on YouTube, and the countertenor was singing this particular song, Pena Tirana by Handel, and I thought, wow, it just gripped my heart immediately. Yeah, and
Yes.
and the lyrics were so heart-wrenching, and I think that immediately felt more relevant to the theme that we are dealing with, yeah, which is the idea of well, a lot of melancholy, a lot of homesickness, a lot of feeling of isolation and depression. Yeah, so all that is kind of very subtly but yet powerfully conveyed in this particular aria by Handel. And Handel has this magical ability to just present the peak of emotions and expression in his very simple melodies. Yeah, so I thought this aria would be absolutely suitable for our project. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Victor, how do you try to portray these emotions of the lyrics and story through your piano playing of this piece?
Okay, so basically for this piece, it starts off with the orchestra tutti, so that it's a bit more powerful, a bit more impactful. So at the same time, it also feels like what Ikea said is very heart-wrenching. It feels there's a certain element of pain to it. So the tutti, I tried to express so-called pain on a more larger scale, or that kind of sorrow. And then when the soloist comes in my accompaniment, I'll try and match his tone, his timbre, and try and feel the harmony changes. Where I think Handel did an amazing job on it. Yeah.
Does it mean that when you work with a different singer, you adjust the accompaniment accordingly?
I try my best, at least I hope to.
Say with the same song.
I think everyone is different, especially when voice is part of your body. Everyone is very different. So I try my best to, for example, see where they need a little bit more time, a little bit more air in between the phrases, or some where if they have longer breath, then I can just go straight in without trying to wait too much. So I just try my best to adjust accordingly.
Yes. So for the collaboration between the both of you, how is it different working in this studio setting where you are facing opposite each other? Is this from an opera or?
Yeah, it's from
an opera, right? Where in fact the singer and orchestra is facing opposite each other in the same format that we had. How is this experience different from a very conventional leader?
So typically, as you mentioned, it's with an orchestra. So I think our one of our objectives would be to recreate that kind of sound or atmosphere, within the context of an opera performance. So I think for us it's not difficult because we have been friends and colleagues for quite some time, and even with the recording engineer, I worked with her previously, so that helps a lot in getting things together and understanding one another in a kind of a tacit way. You don't really need to make it like very obvious, like list out like clearly what you want, because we can kind of understand, and predict what the other person's gonna do. So that works.
Well, as a pianist, usually when we perform with the singer or almost any other instrumentalist, the singer or the instrumentalist will actually be back facing us. They'll be facing the audience, which is on my right. This is quite interesting because, as you mentioned, the singer is facing towards me, and so when I look up, I don't actually see his back. I actually see his expressions. I see his gestures. So you could say it could be a little bit easier to follow at the same time, but there's also an interesting distance in between us, especially in the studio recording. The singer isn't as close as what you're used to. So there are some adjustments to do here and there, but I think overall it's still pretty. I think it went pretty well.
I have an interesting question, which is you mentioned that the piano was slightly loud, but I wasn't in the recording studio. But during the recording, how do you feel about the dynamic balance between the singer and your piano?
Okay, I think it's quite tricky as a pianist to begin with generally because we don't have our own instrument. Like other instrumentalists, they carry their own violin or clarinet wherever they go. But for us, we have to try our best to get accustomed to whatever is given to us. Yes. And sometimes we don't have much time to get used to it. So I tried using the warm-up session just to get a feel of the piano. I feel the piano generally the sound is a little bit bright, especially in this closed setting. So what I tried to do was I used a little bit more una corda on the left pedals to make the sound a little bit more mellower to suit the overall dynamics and feel of the piece.
Yeah, so because the studio is a slightly smaller, closer space, and the pianist had adjusted the acoustics of the space at the same time. Okay, could you say something about collaborating with the audio engineer this morning? How different? Were there anything different with singing a Baroque repertoire with Pei Ling?
I mean, it's definitely different singing with a piano instead of an orchestra, for example. Yeah, because I think this aria does seem like it feels like it has to be accompanied by an orchestra, but I think the piano, given that boomy kind of bass, can provide a semblance to that sound. Yeah. So and I think Pei Ling would be also able to make it such that it gets that fine balance and sound that is suited to a Baroque aria.
So for Victor, were there any differences as performing live and versus in a recording studio, where performing a recording studio is fairly rare in the past?
Yes, there definitely is a difference performing live and performing in the studio. For performing live, actually, you get a bit more adrenaline, I think, and somehow the energy from the audience, you can somehow feel it. In a recording studio, it's a little bit more still, and especially the acoustic is a bit more, for example, if it's silent, it's like very dead silence, right? Because there's no mumbling, no audience rustling around. So the overall feel is different. But for recording, I think we try our best to imagine, at least for me, I try to imagine that I'm still playing for someone. In this case, I imagine playing for IKEA and our sound engineer Pei Ling. So imagine that they're the audience, so I can try and feel some kind of connection